Good evening. We're coming to you with breaking developments from Minneapolis, where a fatal shooting by an immigration and customs enforcement agent has sparked protests and reignited fierce debates about federal immigration enforcement. 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good was shot and killed this morning during an ICE operation in South Minneapolis, and the incident has sent shockwaves through the community and beyond. Tonight, we'll examine what happened, the conflicting accounts from officials, and what this means for the broader conversation about immigration enforcement in America. Here's what we know happened this morning. ICE agents were conducting an immigration enforcement operation in South Minneapolis near the intersection of 34th Street and Portland Avenue. This location is significant. It's about 10 blocks from where George Floyd was murdered in 2020, a fact that hasn't been lost on community members and local officials. During the operation, agents approached a Honda Pilot driven by Renee Nicole Good. What happened next is captured on video, but interpretations of that video differ sharply. The footage shows Good's vehicle pulling forward. An ICE officer positioned in front of the vehicle fired at least 2 shots at close range before jumping back. Good was killed in the shooting. The critical question and the source of intense dispute is whether the officer's life was genuinely in danger. The Department of Homeland Security has claimed that Good weaponized her vehicle and that the officer fired in self-defense. But Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, who reviewed the same video, had a blunt assessment. In his words, that claim is bullshit. He stated that this was an ICE agent recklessly using power that resulted in someone dying. From the available footage, it's unclear whether the vehicle actually made contact with the officer. What is clear is that within seconds, a woman is dead and a community is in anguish. The reaction was swift and intense. Within hours, large crowds gathered at the shooting scene. Protesters chanted, "We want justice, we want peace, we want ICE off our streets." The demonstrations weren't limited to Minneapolis. Protests also erupted in New York City, signaling that this incident is resonating nationally. The political response has been equally charged. Minneapolis Mayor Frey has been unequivocal in his criticism, calling for accountability and questioning the justification for the shooting. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz took the precautionary step of issuing a warning order to prepare the National Guard if needed, a sign of how seriously state officials are taking the potential for escalating unrest. On the federal side, the Department of Homeland Security is standing by its agents, framing the incident as a matter of officer safety during a lawful enforcement operation. This sets up a stark confrontation between federal enforcement priorities and local governance, between competing narratives of what constitutes necessary force. It's worth noting that Minneapolis is a city still healing from the trauma of George Floyd's murder. The proximity of this shooting to that location, the questions about use of force, the video evidence that people can watch and interpret themselves, all of these elements are activating deep wounds and long-standing tensions about policing, federal authority, and accountability. This incident doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's unfolding during a period of intensified immigration enforcement under the Trump administration. ICE operations have expanded, and there's been a deliberate emphasis on demonstrating the federal government's commitment to enforcement actions. That policy approach is meeting resistance in cities like Minneapolis, which have historically positioned themselves as welcoming to immigrant communities and skeptical of aggressive federal enforcement tactics. The collision we're seeing today, federal agents operating in jurisdictions where local officials actively oppose their methods, was perhaps inevitable given these opposing stances. But tonight's story transcends immigration policy debates. This is about the use of deadly force. When should a federal agent fire their weapon? What constitutes an imminent threat? Who reviews these decisions? And how do we ensure accountability when someone dies? These questions matter whether you support aggressive immigration enforcement or oppose it, whether you believe ICE is doing necessary work or whether you think the agency should be abolished. Because regardless of policy positions, most Americans would agree that the use of deadly force by government agents should be justified, transparent, and subject to genuine accountability. The video of this morning's shooting is now public. People can watch it and reach their own conclusions about whether an officer's life was truly in danger, or whether, as Mayor Frey suggests, this was a reckless use of force. That public scrutiny, that ability for citizens to evaluate the actions of government agents is itself significant. So where do we go from here? There will likely be investigations, potentially at the federal, state, and local levels. There may be legal action. The protests we're seeing tonight may grow or subside depending on what happens next. But what won't change is this: Renee Nicole Good is dead. A family is grieving, a community is traumatized, and Americans are once again confronting fundamental questions about power, accountability, and whose version of events we're supposed to believe. In the coming days, we'll learn more about what happened this morning in Minneapolis. We'll hear from investigators, from witnesses, from officials on all sides. But tonight, as protests continue in the streets, one thing is clear: this incident has become a flashpoint, not just for debates about immigration policy, but for deeper questions about how power is exercised in America and who pays the price when it goes wrong. We'll continue following this story as it develops. Thank you for watching.